Ladies and gentlemen, praise God and welcome in. This is the Matthew Dark Show. Now remember, hit subscribe everywhere you get your shows. Never miss an episode. Plenty on the table to discuss around the kitchen table. So if you're getting home from work today in America, October of 2025, you can pick, I don't know, a half a dozen issues that are, how did we get here? And so we're going to get into those. We have a fantastic guest to kind of break it down. Author and attorney, Dennis Brennan. His book is DC Swamp Strikes Back, Aaron Burr and Donald Trump, and their sort of historical alignment, similar issues now separated by, are we 250 years, 230? What's the time separation between these two, Dennis? Welcome in.
Oh, thank you for having me. Yeah, we're talking Burr's in the early 1800s, 1806, 1807, when he was having these issues, to now, basically.
Yeah. Okay. So this is good. And I love this. And I'm a history dork myself. And I got to be honest, when we were getting ready for the show, I had to go back and do a little bit of refreshing on Aaron Burr. But, similar thing, politics have been heated since the beginning of the time. People sometimes like to fantasize that Abraham Lincoln was loved by every single American at that time. And that was also not the case. But kind of give us the temperature, the flavor, the setting. Early 1800s, Aaron Burr. I mean, we're just getting going as a country. Pick it up from there, if you would, sir.
Right. I mean, Aaron Burr, and where we start is the similarity of Burr and Trump kind of being outsiders, both being outsiders when they entered politics. And as you mentioned, they had their own little battles amongst people, even who were allies, like we have now. Everybody thinks that if you're a member of one party or the other, everybody gets along, all these elected officials. They're not. They're not friends. There's very few friends. They're competitors. And you see that every 4 years when you see presidential primaries for the party that's out of power. There's a long line of candidates standing there. So Burr, immediately when he went to Washington as vice president, or even when he ran the first time him and Jefferson ran together, Jefferson ran against Adams. Jefferson had the second amount of votes, and the way they did the voting then, that person became vice president. Talk about awkward, right? Your opponent becomes your, they've changed
though.
that.
Yeah, no kidding.
It's not a bad move if you're running for president, but it's
right.
It's certainly not good, probably for the country.
Probably not.
And you certainly wouldn't want to be president with this other guy who wants to be president sitting by you, and he's in the other party. So that was the first election. Jefferson went on to serve vice president for that term. Burr went back home to New York. And instead of sitting around like others did, like Alexander Hamilton, for instance, Burr made sure he elected people in the General Assembly there who would be of his party. And at that time, the electoral votes were decided by the state legislators. He made sure he elected enough that Jefferson would be able to win New York. He was successful doing that. Jefferson had him back as the vice presidential candidate for the first Jefferson presidential term. They won. But, there's never a time that goes by without controversy. It's a bit like Trump. Even though Burr had done this work, him and Jefferson tied in the number of votes. And again, at that time, another problem we had, that vote then went to Congress. So the vice president, Burr, could have become president by a vote of Congress. And there were people who were enemies of Jefferson and enemies of Burr trying to finagle one or the other in. Burr, for his part, went back home again to New York, didn't really participate. Jefferson, according to all the research I did participate and gave away some things to the other party so that he'd become president. And there were a lot of Jefferson people who thought Burr should have done more. He should have stood up. This is where you get that infighting within the party. He should have stood up. He should have said, hey, I'm running for vice president. We'd all like to think we do that. But honestly, if we're like tied, we may not. We may say, well, let's see how it works out. I might be president. So he didn't do much. A lot of the Jefferson people, the Virginia crowd, Madison, Monroe, were certainly working against him and other people. So he was building up enemies, much like Trump did when he went to Washington. So that's kind of where we take the story from at that point. And, you know, by the second term, Jefferson didn't fight for Burr to be on his ticket, and he wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, that was, and then he had the duel with Hamilton that I think everybody knows about.
Tell us about that again, though, because I mean, we'd love to see some of our stuff maybe settled that way today. I mean, there's sort of a, but give us that intake. He had basically reached a point to where this dispute will settle it like men on a duel. Give us that scenario, will you?
Yes, you know, it's funny because now, as you say, a lot of voters would say, yes, let them duel it out, and we're going to be the winner somehow.
Exactly.
That would be, but you know, we don't have duels. So at that time, duels were illegal in most states, but that didn't stop these two. They crossed over to New Jersey. There's, you know, the Hamilton people tell the story, and history has kind of repeated it,
Mm-hmm.
that Hamilton, although he was the one that challenged him to a duel, actually fired a shot up in the air.
Mm.
You know, he hit a tree. Now, is that true? Who knows? History is, you know, wrong so often, even our current,
Sure.
you know, in the last 10 years, the things we've learned, you know, first we think something's true, then we find out, oh, that's not true. So we'd have no idea of knowing if that's true. But Burr fired right at Hamilton. Hamilton died the next day.
Mm.
That should have been the end of Burr's career. And it kind of, you know, it's told, you know, we're in school, we're told that's it, he's done. You might get into some of the other stuff with what they call the Burr conspiracy, where he's accused of trying to raise an army and go to war with Spain, who controlled a large portion of, you know, the western part of what's known as the United States now, but wasn't. But the only, you know, and he was charged for treason twice for that.
Yeah.
He always claimed he wasn't raising an army to fight Spain, that it was all a fabrication from a friend of his, which again, we hit on in the book about, you know, a friend testifying because Trump had Michael Cohen testify against him. And
yes.
When you have one person testify and you don't have much other evidence, it becomes, well, my word against your word. And luckily in treason, I think for everybody, in case, you know, we throw treason around now all the time.
Yeah.
Everybody's treasonous. That's really a bad definition.
Well, everybody's a treasonous. They're either racist, anti-Semitic. Yeah, we've ruined the quality of that word for sure.
Yeah, and I think we've lost the meaning of so many words.
Yes.
You know, are people really Nazis? I mean, even the small percentage of fools that think they're Nazis aren't really Nazis. They're not part of
they've done
the
that
Nazi
part of
party.
Group, and they couldn't actually do some of the acts that Nazis went along and did. So it is a ridiculous conjecture to suggest that we you know, because what's sad about it is there is racism. There is probably people that hate this because of color, but we got to reserve those words for that special breed of people. I wonder with Burr, just sort of that underlying support, did he have that sort of common man, American, I fight for the people thing? Is that how he was viewed by the people and gained support that way, in similarity to Trump? Or what did he look like from a national perspective?
Right. You know, even though, like Trump, Burr's dad started Princeton University. So I think we can say, you know, Burr and Trump weren't, you know, eating scraps off the street. They weren't, you know, their dad wasn't working, you know, 2 jobs to get by.
Yes.
Not that there's anything wrong with that, you know.
No.
But he really got the attention of people. He argued against the Jay Treaty in the legislature. People noticed, like, this guy really knows what he's talking about. He has some, you know, intelligence and appeals to the people, and he'd be a good candidate. And that's when some of, you know, Jefferson's party started taking a look at him. Up until then, I think much like Trump, people didn't really know where he stood. They thought he was an interesting fella.
Yeah.
But, you know, I've told people, you know, going into the 2015, you know, time when they were doing the debates, most of us would have said Trump's a Democrat.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know if there's anything that would tell you he's a Republican. And for sure, he's changed a lot about the Republican Party now,
Yeah.
on how Republicans view issues and so forth. But not to the point of being the Democrat Party. He was, very, very supportive of a lot of their causes, and some of that might have been just business because you're in business. But
Right.
yes, Burr had a similar connection to people, and for that reason, he was an asset to Jefferson.
Absolutely. You can bring that kind of following because there's no doubt at this point in American history, Trump has built the largest coalition, the largest following, the largest amount of enthusiasm. Vote shows that, the MAGA hats show that, the yard signs. You'd have to go back to printing histories probably to find if there is even somebody who's gained this kind of support. 2015 Donald Trump, though, is very different than 2025 Donald Trump. And that's where we are at today. And it pains me to say that because as he came down the escalator at Mar-a-Lago with the lovely Melania on the shoulder, and it was going to be at that time, we're going to drain the swamp and Mexico is going to pay for the wall. Okay. And so we had this kind of, okay, I can get behind that. Let's go. It was anti-Hillary Clinton, anti-establishment, and we're off to the races. And MAGA was born. And the greatest underdog story, I remember the New York Times headlines in the days before the election. They were predicting a 90-10 Hillary win for 2016. And he smoked her. And then he's been faced this adversity after adversity. It's a story that'll go down much like Aaron Burr, as we're talking about 250 years later, but maybe even at a 10x factor. I wonder, though, you talk about the split, the divide in the parties, inner party, and we are there right now. Okay. There is this where I believe you had this sort of rhino prior to this. Because see, in January 2025, Trump takes over. And, in November, we're thinking, we got him back. America's saved. We're going to go get him. Things change very quickly once in office. The superstars that he put on his team, look great on paper. You cannot give Kash Patel or Pam Bondi anything other than an F-. If there was a degree to go lower, we would take them there. So we're not getting sort of the fantasy, the fairy tale that we do. And so that's the divide. We have MAGA. We had rhinos, right? So this is Mitch McConnell's and all the people that at the RNC that hate Trump and Americans like myself. And then you've got MAGA that used to be, we're not rhinos, but we're all in on Trump because Trump's going to go to Washington. He's going to do this. He's going to give us the Epstein list. He's going to go take down, we've got our political enemies to get after: Bolton, Letitia James, James Comey. We're coming after heads. We're going to deal with COVID and all these things. And so that split today, I think, is maybe the most consequential, because at this point now in history, you have Democrats that they don't seem to be able to leave their flock, right? So they stay totally connected on these absolutely ridiculous and horrific issues. And then now you have a 50-50 split, MAGA and established. I mean, that's my fear right now, is that we have quickly gone from MAGA into an establishment style of government from the Trump White House. And that split is so real. I wonder what you think about Republican Party now moving forward. There's no way you can have a third, or a 50% and then 225s against Democrats. What does Trump have to do, like, to win somebody like me back who feels totally betrayed? We've caught you doing a behavior that we didn't think you were capable of or would do to us, which is lying to the American people. You were going to be the honest, the transparent, and you've lied to us. How does Trump put the pieces back together, salvage his political career and the Republican Party? And I don't even subscribe to that, but the opposite of Democrats. How does that body of Americans survive? The old MAGA, I guess you may say. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think you touch on an important point. If MAGA, Republicans in general, however you want to play it out, can't win elections if they're divided.
No.
There's just no way. And I think what Trump showed in this last election, with a lot of help, was he brought a lot of people together that we didn't expect to be there.
Yes.
Musk joined. Even stopping Zuckerberg from doing anything was a victory. You started getting a lot of tech guys. Obviously, Bobby Kennedy joining him on stage, and
Yes.
Becoming part of the administration was important because those people appealed to, non-Republicans and probably non-MAGA. I mean, I always liked Kennedy.
Yeah.
Musk, I was wary about, but now we've had that split with Musk off. We have certain people, especially in the podcast world or whatever we want to call this new media, who have some trust issues, I think, with the administration or some complaints. You hear it a lot. That's and it has seeped down, obviously, to the other level because Joe Rogan was the other guy that came as part of the campaign, and
Right.
Theo Vaughn, and these guys had their own following. They still have their own following.
Yep.
All these people do, and if they're out there upset with it, either the reality or perception that Trump isn't being honest with them or that the administration isn't being honest. Like one of the big mistakes, Pam Bondi, whether you believe her or don't believe her on what she was talking about when she said it's on her desk, the list, I think she said, is it the file? Is it the list? Is there a list? It becomes very confusing because if you call it a list and you say it's on your desk, and then you later say, no, I was saying the file. What are
That's
you
not going to
referring
fly, Pam. That's just not going to work. These words, we're going to trick words. We know what you said. We know it's been sitting out there this whole time. Trump knows it's true. She knows it's true. And so we have a major cover up. I mean, I don't think, I guess that's the concern, is that those people that, when we were all together as MAGA and it was go get them, and we want the boys out of the locker rooms, and we want the BLM and those riots to stop, and we want all these things to improve, and Trump's going to go get it done. We were all on the same side. I wonder, what is it though inside of that MAGA person that is now willing to accept liars like Kash Patel, who went up there and said Epstein killed himself. End of story. He didn't point to any proof. He just said because he had been into that prison before, it looked like a suicide. And then the other element was Trump used the Epstein files against Bill Clinton in that original campaign. I mean, he was certainly saying, I don't know about Hillary, but I know Bill's got a lot of problems. And then for that to turn into, out of his words, a Democrat hoax. And then you remember the famous one where he said, are we still talking about Jeffrey Epstein? And he was so upset with it.
Yes.
So why the instinct to want to lie to us? And then I guess why just the acceptance and not challenge that lie? Trump has not repented for the COVID-19, the Wuhan 19, the virus that was made in a lab in North Carolina, shipped to Wuhan, China, then spread to the world to then be employed a vaccine that they had already made and then began hurting people. He's never repented for that. Our deportations have stopped. I mean, they don't even report the numbers anymore. We're going to kind of put a couple of political sacrifices, Bolton, Letitia James, and Comey. I mean, so we've got all this stuff going on here. What I feel like we're doing is the stuff we really want, they're going to not give us, but to throw us some carrots, some bones, some treats, some distractions, we'll go after Letitia James for mortgage fraud. Is that going to be enough for the American people to come back in and say, okay, Trump is still thing? I'll just say right now, if we don't get the Epstein list, he's toast, and he's probably impeached in 26. So how does this shake out? How does he recover from what he's done without getting himself killed or destroying global order? And I think he knows the consequences are steep on both sides.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot there. What I guess there's different levels, right? There's some people that want 100% adherence to everything that was said, and they believe there's a list, whether there is or isn't, they believe it. How do you prove, if there is no list, how do you prove that there isn't a list? I guess you open the file and pour it out on a table, right? I don't know. I guess that's what I will
extract the list from the file. Give us the files. You don't have to have it translated to a perfect 1 through 30 list. I'll do that. Let us have the file. Continue.
And then you wonder, and then when they talk about this list, I think part of the problem, whether it's Kash Patel, Trump going back how many years, or anybody, and this happens with issues all the time, they talk about things they don't know anything about, and then when they actually take a look, it's like, oh, whatever the reason, because you hear all these rumors and you don't know, are there national security implications? Well, that's been the excuse for 200 years, right?
Yes, right.
It's it's national security, that's classified.
Easy
And when
cop
you
out.
right, and then you're like, well, why did you classify that? Because it's not
Yeah,
a state secret, right?
right.
It's the same way you see these documents, and I think with the Trump case, maybe even with Biden stuff in his garage and Bolton, it seems like everybody has classified documents
Yes.
except
Mhm.
the people. So they stamp everything classified, so we can't see it,
Yes.
and I'm not sure we care to see it. I'm not sure it's that important.
Right.
And then they'll say, "Oh, they violated the law by having classified documents." Maybe they shouldn't have made them classified.
And that's
Maybe
super
that's
fair right there. Okay. Because you do see that inside of the Epstein files where they have labeled stuff classified, national security. But then, okay, great. Then that answer by itself tells me, the American person, this is legit, it is serious, and must be dissolved and described to the American people. You can't have a notorious pedophile that then puts the United States subject to national security. We could be compromised as a result of this pedophile. It's that severe, but yet I'm not a good person if I challenge or question, or I'm not MAGA or American first if I want to see what's in these things. And so to me, the answer is right there. This, if there was nothing there, we'd have it. If there was nothing there, the natural instinct of the people would already have gone away. But, I guess that's that sort of, we saw what was going on with JFK in that file release. Nobody cared. It's beyond clear it was not Lee Harvey Oswald on the grassy knoll at the suppository, blah, 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 blah. They don't want to talk about how Jack Rubenstein then kills him, the patsy, the next. I mean, so we didn't even flinch when we saw that evidence. And then here we are, actually seeking out the guts, the meats of this thing. And I think they're just playing it out as a time game. I said, we let this thing go out longer and longer. The emotion's going to wear. You're going to have a few left. Guys like me will say, no, but the average person, they've moved on. We're still looking at next month's bills. We've got Christmas coming up. Epstein, what? We're just trying to survive. I mean, is that maybe more the mode of America right now?
yeah, that's the 24/7 news cycle, right?
Yeah.
JFK is a great example. They were talking about that to people in their grade schools since the 60s, right?
Yes.
They had the Warren Commission,
Yep.
that kind of whitewashed it.
Yep.
They had, every so often people would say there's something wrong with this, and they'd point to the commission findings. And 62 years later, a lot of people are dead. So the people that really cared to see it are like, well, I'm dead.
Yep.
And the
Yeah.
rest of us are like, well, I was like two.
Right.
So for me, it's like, yeah, I know who he is,
Mm-hmm.
but how much skin do I have in that game? I've got my other problems. I'm wondering about the
Yes.
Epstein files, the current issues, and they kind of, I think administrations come and go and know this.
Mm-hmm.
The deep state in Washington knows it for sure. You
Mm-hmm.
just delay, delay, delay,
Yes.
and eventually the people lose interest in it,
That's
and
right.
some other issue takes its place.
And I guess that's the thing, is at what point do we say, nah, this one crossed the line. This one was kids. This one taps into every single emotion that is just naturally God-given in our creation, that is unacceptable in any capacity. And so I guess the fear is even something as despicable as this Epstein case, the files, if there was actually a pursuit of justice, meaning if we were to go back, say, to our founders. And I think if the founders had the Epstein files in front of them, I think they would act differently. I don't think they were career politicians that had already been bribed and had tons of money pumped into their campaigns at the founding. I think they would say, oh my goodness, we have corruption amongst us. We have decay and rot amongst us. We simply can't say America, the greatest nation in the world, and allow this cancer to continue. That's what's so hilarious about, United States is going to get all this credit for brokering peace in the Middle East, while children are in a closet somewhere being abused, being not fed, being sold, being all these things. And we're going to tell people how to run a country. We're going to broker peace in Russia and Ukraine. We're going to look at Donald Trump and say there's a Nobel Peace Prize candidate, while we actively cover up an incredible scandal. So I just would ask people to put themselves in the mind. And the Epstein victims are just a portion of our trafficked children. I mean, those are the ones, maybe whatever that is, 100, 500, 1,000 victims, whatever this huge number is. there's also this epidemic going on all over the country. And at some point, the American people have to say, you know what? I know I'm busy. This is unacceptable. I'm going to stand against this as a Christian conservative, as an American or an independent. I understand there's about 10% of the left that will never be able to understand things that you and I are talking about. They've become so demonically captured. They've become so mentally ill. All they can see is men in swimsuits and a wig, and all they can see is BLM burning down cities, and all they can see is death and destruction. But for the most people, I was hopeful, wishful, prayerful that the Epstein justice pursuit would move the needle in their hearts. And what I see is the opposite. I see the conservative person really not want to discuss the Epstein stuff, really not want to hold to account the COVID atrocities, because we have so much to deal with here. We're not deporting these people. In fact, the talk is more now, well, let's keep the landscapers, let's keep the gardener, let's keep the this. And MAGA said, the hardcore original MAGA, as I said, I bet you there's some wonderful people out here. But unfortunately, our inner cities are imploding. The American ghetto is now like a third world country. We just don't have any resources available because America is burning. And that's, I guess, what I'm getting to is you just strip away the pretty flashy headlines. America's burning and rotting from the inside, and nobody seems to be paying attention. Stuff is still too expensive. Just because eggs came down, that doesn't change my life. Gas is still too expensive. Groceries are too expensive. Housing is too expensive. There's too many people. There's not enough freedom. And now here we coming in with, AI, crazy everything AI. So are we kind of like cattle just being led to the slaughterhouse, or is there actually a really breakthrough coming in which the American guy, the blue collar guy, his life is now tangibly, demonstrably better as a result of the policies that this white, because when we solve wars in Israel, doesn't do anything for that guy. When we broker peace in Ukraine, doesn't do anything for that guy. Where's hope coming for the average American? We seem to be distracted all over the world, but right here. What do you think?
Yeah, I think the hope is on prices. I mean, you hit on it, and and I don't know exactly why so many prices are still high or higher than they were. Because gas was what we said was the problem, right? The oil prices, everything gets delivered, everything's made with oil. Hey, that all makes sense. And I think to an extent that's true. But is it that the prices went up and nobody reduces prices? Because now, if you go out to eat, just for instance, you're paying a lot more than you used to pay.
Absolutely.
Certainly, prior to Joe Biden. That's when gas prices went up, it skyrocketed. They haven't come down, even though they should be taking that. And I know guys that have businesses who would say, well, yeah, all my costs went up back then, during the Biden term. That's why I'm now charging $8 for this, hot dog combo that was $5. Okay, yes. I get it. I think I get it. But now gas is back down a bit, and quite a bit. And you're sitting there going, but you didn't reduce your price. In fact, your price might be higher. It appears to be higher. So
absolutely.
I hate to think that, businesses are taking advantage of it.
Well, you just nailed it. This is exactly what's going on, is because who's going to be the dumb guy if you're in a business of 30 sandwich shops, and although you're getting a little better deal on your ham now, are you going to be the first guy to lower prices when nobody's even seeming to matter that you pay $19 for a sub sandwich or whatever? That is a collective benefit. So, like the Federal Reserve's mandate, inflation, they want prices to go up 2% a year forever. That's in their mandate. Is okay. So you got to think about it. We probably jumped up 3 to 5% under Biden. We're still up there. What is the incentive for the business owner to just say, all right, I'll go back, even though I don't have to. I'll take less money, even though my competitors are going to kill me. They're going to still make $20 a sandwich. That's exactly what you just said. Once inflation takes place, like on the goods and the things that we have to buy, it's permanent. It doesn't reverse, but you might get a good deal on a TV in the future. You might get a good deal on a cell phone in the future, but the stuff you got to have, gas, health insurance, rent, food, nobody's moving those prices. Nobody's going to make them. Go ahead.
And that's a problem, because if you mentioned, how does the guy here, how does the working guy make it? Yeah. And if you're Elon Musk, it doesn't matter what a sandwich costs, right? It doesn't matter what a car costs. Nothing matters. Right. I mean, it may matter if he's, just in his mind, but it doesn't matter.
No.
It does matter to the guy who works every day and his salary was X.
Yep.
And even if he gets 3% as a raise, okay, that's not keeping up.
Nope.
Where do I get my raise that gets me above? Because nobody cares what the prices are if they're making enough money.
Nope.
But you're not, and none of us are, right? We're all
correct.
falling behind in real money.
Yes.
And even though, the tax cut, and it's amazing to me, we have Democrats who are actually campaigning for like Senate and House seats, arguing against the tax cut.
Right.
And it's like, well, but you know why they get away with that is most people don't even know what they pay in taxes. And most people actually don't pay taxes. You got 53% of the country that pays no federal income tax, which is
right.
a whole other subject and is crazy to me. But
correct.
For the rest of us who do pay, most of us could not say year by year, am I paying more? Am I paying less? We kind of just look, you either get a refund or you write a check, but you really don't have a good connection to it. So when the Republicans over the years, and Trump has done it now twice with these tax cuts, yeah, it's great for a day or so, but do you get that initial, do people really feel it in their wallet? Because
no,
the refund time doesn't come for a while,
Yeah, well, exactly. And again, it's like, okay, that feels good for the moment, but at the end of the day, grocery bill is still going to be. And then what happens when the 3% per year raise stops? And that absolutely is going to stop because you're going to get older. We can get somebody out of college, brand new. We can start the cycle over again. So we're trapped. The housing, forget about it. $450,000 median average home in America. That is a major salary to be able to afford that. So what is it? Our young people, well, they rent, they don't save, they have no equity, they don't have kids, they don't do those kind of American things. We fall behind. We've seen just this influx of illegal immigration. Another stat that people really should get comfortable with is that the average white male in America is having 1.8 children per man. The average Hispanic, 4.2. The average Muslim man, now this is what they do breeding, 7 children per Muslim man. So you're having increased population, which we have a housing crisis and we're saying, come in and take our homes. It doesn't make any sense to me. We have less jobs on the table, which now we have wages coming down. And we just, it's over. So it really at this point, when we're at this point, it's that sort of collective rebellion, that collective revolt, that collective, we can no longer pay taxes, period. We can no longer subscribe to your services. We can no longer pay 30% on our credit cards. We as a collective are not participating. That's the only way out of this. What you can see as the American people, you will not vote your way out of this conundrum. It's not possible because greatest president of all time, MAGA president, has actually cemented something very, very dangerous for the average guy. Twofold. The inflation element appears to be permanent, meaning it's not a housing crash. If you remember 08, 09, we had out of control housing prices and it led to calamity. But the result of that, and I know this was for a fact, is it cut housing in half. Credit was a little bit more restrictive. But for those with means or ability or did not get caught up, housing had a major return to normal post that event. And then what we saw is from 11, 12 and on, housing just got out of control. And now there is no undoing the housing problem in America. You'd have to stop funding every foreign war. You'd have to start funding every piece of foreign aid and say, we're just going to invest in housing infrastructure. We have an economic.
You're hitting on something there, though. You're asking, like, what does Trump do, right, to start this whole conversation?
Yeah.
And I don't have that plan in my head, but someone should be working on something big because all of that, information that you've described, those facts, if you're a young person, like I have my house, right? I'm good.
Yeah, you're good. Right.
I'm good.
Yeah.
And to an extent, I know how we look at it as Americans. It's like, well, I'm fine. I don't know about the next guy. But, I think Ronald Reagan said it, right? That when your neighbor loses your job, it's a recession. And when you lose your job, it's a depression. There's some truth to that, right? It doesn't affect me. But if I'm a younger person and I don't have a house, like I'm coming out of college where I've spent way more, or my parents have spent way more.
Yes.
Either way, there's loans, or there's been a big investment, but I'm not making what I thought I would make. And maybe none of us ever did, but over time we were able to
Yes.
go where we wanted to go. We got some kind of job.
Yes.
But this housing issue, they are looking at the first generation and not have that American dream. And if you don't have the American dream, you're susceptible to the AOCs of the world,
Yep.
to the Bernie Sanders, the people who carry the socialist card, who are communist, socialist, whatever you want to call them. They're going to really get into the minds and hearts of those younger people, who then say, well, your system's not working, MAGA.
Yeah,
And,
exactly.
I'm going to go with AOC. And then we're going to go back into, because in my opinion, what Biden did, that wasn't his administration. It was everybody but him.
Exactly.
If you look at his career, that's not him.
Nope.
But what he did in those 4 years probably did more damage to the country than any other 4 years.
100%, not even close.
And that's a problem, because that's what we face. So somewhere in Washington with the administration, there are some good people. I mean, I know we hit on the ones that aren't, but there's some good people there who could come up with something big. And maybe it's some outsiders too. Maybe, guys who have big ideas. Elon Musk always has big ideas. He's always, I don't know if this is his area, but he seems to be in every area now.
It would take innovation in how do you get, because the only thing that makes America special is the American dream. I mean, that's it, right? Because if you separate, it's like, well, it's not the climate, it's more expensive than any other country. I mean, so it's because you can have the thoughts you want to have, you can work hard, you can do things, and it's like limitless opportunity is the dream. Once that's squashed, you hit it on the head. This place does. And that's how you get somebody that's marching in the streets of Portland with a mask on, talking about, anti-fascist and all this. That's a disillusion, no hope, lost, nothing to lose. And they've captured that person. And more of those are produced is a big problem for MAGA, conservatives, people like Trump. It's just a problem. You cannot have a bunch of people that don't care about their country or actually opposite, hate it. I mean, they actually inwardly hate America. They're being programmed that way. He has to touch those people, but not by coddling their insecurities, but by reinstating, okay, this is what we're going to do. I mean, first of all, I know this, every woman that has to go work, I know that's not her dream to have to go work a 9 to 5 and bust her butt. She'd rather be at home taking care of kids, doing things that increase the home. So that person needs to see that there's men that want to have that kind of life and that they could actually make it. If you know that you could never support a house, a family, kids, are you even looking for that kind of a woman? You're looking at the checkbook, you're looking at the economy. I'm not going to ever afford a $500,000 house. I'm a welder, I'm a this. I don't make that. I don't make 300 grand a year. I don't get to participate in, I'm not looking for a wife. I can't afford kids. I don't want any of that stuff. I'm not making commitments. That doesn't sound like the kind of country that wants to fight for it, that wants to band together for decency and morality and the basics of, well, we don't let men go into women's locker rooms, and I'd get out of here, bud, or we're going to have to do this around the corner. 1950s, none of this stuff goes on, but we've let things slow slip, started in the 80s with homosexuals. And it was all about, well, just leave us alone. Let us hold hands on the beach. Then let us get married. Then just refer to us the way you want. Now let us into the women's locker rooms. And so because we just refuse to resist, we in a very bad predicament, which has almost put us to where it has to be inventively, we have to start over. This isn't going to work this way. It's too expensive. Powers that be are lying. The biggest disappointment for Donald Trump, and I've got Donald Trump shoes. I've got a hat. I've been a part of, voted 3 times. I mean, I'm all in on the record for Donald Trump, but I was betrayed. And I can be betrayed if I'm receiving a benefit of that betrayal. When I know I'm not benefiting economically or from a personal freedoms capacity, I have a serious conflict with now you lying to me. So what's in it for me now to say, go with Trump. I mean, he's creating a bunch of non-voters and independents, I feel, because see, for me, I could never go to the left. These people are disgusting. So you know what I do with my ballot when I get it in the mail? I rip it up. That's not an American way of life. But if we're discouraged at every option, and not even discouraged, but say, well, that's a death sentence. That's a death sentence. Can't vote for that. That's going to hurt me and my family. How do we do that? I mean, so it's almost like, geez, this MAGA movement was the reinvented wheel. It feels like it had a very short life cycle. It's not the same MAGA it was 10 years ago, which means the enthusiasm of America. Democrats don't have enthusiasm for America. It was just guys that say, I love America, I love God, and I love kids and hot dogs and Sundays and baseball and those things. That's what America was surviving on. You don't want to discourage that, though. And now it's like, well, I'm just taking care of my family. That's all I care about is my family, my stuff. Everything else out there is a betrayal. I don't know. Is that just too discouraged thinking, too black pill?
I think it might be, you're more pessimistic than I am, but
Okay.
I will say it's almost, when we talk about what can he do, we always get back to that issue. And it seems like maybe it's share. You know, there's other people as part of MAGA that are very good. I think obviously lost a big one with Charlie Kirk being killed. But Charlie Kirk did an awful lot of good for the movement.
Yes.
He brought in a lot of people just through his, visits to universities, his podcasts, his appearances in places. That isn't dying, although they killed him. And I think maybe there has to be more of that where the presidency's hard. There's no doubt about it. For some, it's impossible. Like Biden, I don't think he had any ideas, and he had a bunch of people around him who had more socialistic ideas than he was used to, but he allowed that to happen. So he gets no quarter on that. Trump.
Correct.
Trump has a great energy. He's all over the place, but there's 1,000 problems, right? And we've just touched on a few of them. Mm-hmm. And to fix all of them, you're going to need many hands in there. And I think a lot of people have to help figure those things out, develop plans. I mean, they've talked about the housing crisis, and I think you hit on one. If all these illegals, they're living somewhere.
Oh, yeah.
Right? I mean, why can't those, wherever they're living, those should be housing options for people. Absolutely. Now, maybe some of those neighborhoods have been torn apart because 3 families are living in it. You're going to have to rehab all that, which does create work for, people who can do rehabilitation work in homes. It's going to take a lot of money. How do you get that money?
And I want to stop right there because money, I know where we can get it. We can get it from Ukraine. We can get it from Israel. We can get it from all these foreign projects that it's like, hey, you know what? We're wealthy. We want to help. We really do. But right now, we've got a flood in our residence, and it's also our house is burning simultaneously. So right now, even though I know you guys need our help, we'll be right back with you. 2 seconds. We've got to fix this problem. We've got major crime. We've got major crises, and we got to use our assets a little bit more. I mean, you sound like a fool letting our own people suffer as you're celebrating all this. We'll send them Tomahawk. I mean, I don't know how much Tomahawks and helicopters and tanks cost, but I bet you if you grabbed $200 million, which would just be 10% of what they've sent to Ukraine so far, and this money is dedicated. Remember how proud of Operation Warp Speed we were? 9 months, we got a vaccine. This is Operation Warp Speed. You have a crisis in America. Let's have it. Continue.
Yeah. And I think that's it. You're right. There's got to be something like that put together. I mean, there were some deals. I don't know what we're getting from Ukraine on the minerals deal.
That's a long term. In 30 years, my grandkids will start to see some residual check.
Yeah, well, that's not good enough. I mean, Trump has talked about tariff money. Again, how long is that going to last? What are we doing with that?
Mind you, the 30 trillion, the 40 trillion in debt, this tariff. I mean, what's so sad is this is such a tiny number compared to, okay. It's like me losing or getting a penny. I'm not going to know the difference. So even this tariff money, if you're serious about paying off your debt, good luck. Again, that's another 100-year project. I'll be dead and gone. I need something today.
But isn't that the problem? Like they've let it get this far.
Yes.
That we're so far in debt, it's like, because nobody wants
Yeah.
to cut anything.
No.
Whether it's, no, we can't cut national defense, we can't, and at the same time, we can't cut all these programs. They didn't want to. They don't want to cut programs where we know illegals are actually benefiting. I mean, California or Los Angeles, I believe, they actually passed something where they're going to spend money to give to illegals who can't work. How about we spend money to send them out of the country? I don't understand why anybody would reelect that mayor, or anybody on that city council that votes for that.
And that's what I just don't understand, is that if votings are real, supposedly, and I guess the more I see Democrat-led cities that are just in such rot, I just continue. How is voting even real? How are elections even real? What person sitting in their living room is actually going to fill out a ballot for some of these policies? I mean, what? So that if that's true, America is in like almost irrecoverable shape, because that person is so mentally ill. They should be in an asylum getting treatment as we speak. And yet they're voting and making policy for America. So that has to be addressed. Either they're so sick, Satan must come out of them, or this voting is all fake. And the only way that people like Karen Bass and these, LGBTQ fire department chiefs and all this stuff that they do, I don't think any really normal American goes for that stuff, but somehow these people get in power. I don't get it. That's why it's civil disobedience, it's civil rebellion, saying, but it's our money. I have a feeling, January 6th, that kind of stuff, that ain't gonna fly. Just stop buying their stuff. So, like, collectively, our pocketbooks are so much more powerful than and we would be able to outlast them. I'll give you an example. If every Christian MAGA conservative person said, we want to make a point to Washington, we're canceling our cable bill until further notice. We're canceling our cable bill until you release the Epstein list. I think it would come, because see, you're talking what? Okay, so my Comcast bill, if I do all the TV and stuff, call it $200 a month. What is that math? Real quick. Let me just do some math real quick, because it's a collective movement. My pocket, if I cancel Comcast, ain't gonna do nothing. But 200 times 30 million equals that. Okay. So we're talking about something that would bankrupt Comcast in just a few months, right? We're talking about billions of dollars of lost revenue. And you do that. You say, boy, that sounds really aggressive. Why? That sounds like that's super mean. Here's what's mean is mom and dad both got to work full time. Their taxes are essentially 50% or greater. Children now see less of their parents because they're both working. They're stressed out. They don't have time. I think that's really aggressive policy. I think it's really aggressive to take half of somebody's money and then send it to Israel, send it to Ukraine. And by the way, as a taxpayer who did have portions of his tax monies sent to Ukraine, sent to Israel, sent to Iran, can I expect a return on that monies? So it's like I'm starting to sit there wondering, now, well, hold on a second. When do we as a collective hold to account? So again, that goes back to the finances. At some point, people will just have to say, there's no money left. You've got it all. We're just homeless now too. Nobody came to the rescue. Goodbye. I want to move to, you talked about Charlie Kirk. You talked about that movement. I think that's kind of where we'll wrap this. Our guest is Dennis Brennan. Author, attorney. His book is DC Swamp Strikes Back. Aaron Burr, Donald Trump, and their similar battles. What we're told on Charlie Kirk is a homosexual trans man took his grandfather's 30-06. He went up onto the roof and he nailed that shot. He nailed it. And what they're calling an exit wound, they're calling an entrance wound. They're saying that his neck bone stopped that bullet. There was no exit. And that basically the killer laid out in a sort of a crumb trail for the confession. And so there we are. And I guess where I'm so disappointed is I really do believe, now as you hear more about Charlie Kirk, more on the background, his wife really concerns me. I'm not going to lie. I know it's not popular. I really am uncomfortable with his wife. I'm uncomfortable with Andrew Colvett on the producer, executive guy on the program. But what I'm really uncomfortable with is that, Kash Patel just got done lying to us over Epstein. And Pam Bondi and all these people, but they come out with the Tyler Robinson story and they lay it out. It's done. Case closed. Moving on. I guess I'm just surprised that there's such little resistance from society on that narrative. It sounds so preposterous. I don't know your thoughts on it. a government that has a record of lying, not just recently, but historically, lays out this story for us. I don't know. Does it feel right to you, the narrative and all the circumstances and what that actually does? I mean, who that benefited? I don't know. It doesn't feel right. It feels icky.
I know there's a lot of people who have, theories and so forth on
Yeah.
other people that might be involved. And, will we ever know? As we said, it took 62 years to get them to release,
Right.
the Kennedy files.
Yes.
So we may never know. I think the problem is for this young man, I guess he was referred to as a man, right?
Yeah.
It was the
Yes.
partner that was doing the transition, I think.
Exactly. So he's gay. The lover's transvestite. I don't know. It's a
Yeah.
strange world.
It is, and it's but it gets stranger when you
Yeah.
go and allegedly
Yeah.
shoot someone.
Right.
And part of the problem we have watching it is you see something happen and Charlie grab his side and
Yes.
fall over.
Yes.
And I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of theories, but I don't know that any of them can be really investigated, right? The government's already investigated, the local police, the sheriff, the FBI's involved. Of course, they've investigated other killings. That's where, John F. Kennedy. And once they kind of put their stamp on it, it's case closed. They'll
Yes.
convict this guy easily. I don't, the other stuff, I don't, I didn't know much about Charlie Kirk's wife. I've seen her now.
Yeah.
I know who she is. And the same thing with Andrew Colvin. I've seen the podcasts more now. I have a Samsung TV and they have their own network, and it's a good podcast. I see it every time I turn on the TV.
Right.
And they seem to do a good job. I think
They do.
they're assuming that all of this, all these people wanting to start new chapters and build it out, that's going to work well.
Yeah.
But when you lose, the charismatic leader,
it don't work.
It's hard, right?
Oh, yeah.
I don't know when that's, even the civil rights movement, you lost Martin Luther King.
Yep.
There were a lot of people that
it hasn't been replaced yet.
No. And because you couldn't replace a guy like that. And I think maybe Charlie Kirk's one of those guys you can't replace. You just, you might have a lot of people trying. So, I mean, I think that part's going to be very difficult, but I don't know who, they make a case here, this Robinson. What was in it for him is he had this weird, I guess, yes. He was, what did he say? Supposedly, he was saying at some point you have to take action. Even
he was going to avenge. He had basically, Charlie Kirk had been so mean with his words about people like his lover that he couldn't take it, and this had to stop, and violence was the only way. So it was an act of, love, defending his lover. I mean, it's so strange to suggest, though, then, okay, because he wanted to live, obviously, because he escaped, but yet he confesses. He leaves himself totally vulnerable to capture. And then, I remember initially they did come out. His father turns him in, or turns him in. His father got a $1.2 million reward for turning his son in. That was paid by Bill Ackman, who was a big fan of Charlie Kirk's. And so you sit there and you think, well, that's strange. And then you sit there and you think, well, why haven't they released those videos from behind Charlie Kirk that would clearly show significantly more? Why did they take him away from the crime scene so quickly? And what the turning point people say about that, because you clearly see somebody going and taking the cards out of those cameras after, like, one of the first things they do is go take those things. And what they say is, well, we didn't want those to end up in the wrong hands, and there could be really, harmful images on there that a person may use. I think harmful hands. You gave it to the FBI. They turned them over to the FBI. That's the worst place those things could end up. I mean, the FBI has had the Epstein files. How many women were assaulted past, beyond the FBI having the Epstein files? Meaning, so that's the worst place files can be. So we haven't seen anything like that. There was no coroner's report. I mean, that's what's so crazy about this, is if this kid actually went to trial, he walks. I mean, go for just the ballistics alone. Okay. car accident police officers can tell you that the vehicle was turning at this degree, at this approximate speed when impact was made. Are you telling me you're going to be able to fudge a trajectory of a bullet, the gauge of a bullet? They don't have a bullet. They said we could just prove that all by seeing his shattered vertebrae that supposedly stopped the 30-06 from 150. They're just, it's out of control. And so the kid can't actually go to trial. Could you imagine? Could you imagine this kid go to trial and he's found not guilty? You can't have that. So it's either got to be an AI trial, or he's got to be killed prior to, or some kind of stunning new evidence has got to come together. But to proceed under the idea of this is exactly what happened and they figured it all out in one day is preposterous. And so because he was such a valiant, noble, honorable, righteous man, such a worthy man, it's shameful, in my opinion. So many people are not pursuing. And I'll give you a great example. Talk radio in town, and I'll often call in this subject or to speak on this subject. And I will be told prior to getting on the air, if you bring up Charlie Kirk or the conspiracies around his death, we'll just hang up the phone on you. And this is the theme on a lot of Salem channels. This is a theme in a lot of these, that's the sad part. This is Officer Tatum. These are those podcasters, those influencers that about the sort of the payments from Israel. They're paying $7,000 for pro-Israel or promoting type pieces. And so we're really getting to where, they've now gotten into the pocketbook of people that used to be on our side. And I think Dan Bongino is a great example of somebody who built a massive podcast on this. There's rot in the government, and I know it, and we're going to stay on them. And FBI is hiding the Epstein files. And what does he do as soon as he gets that government job? Sits there like a good little puppy dog and Epstein killed himself. I've seen it before. Just believe me. Like as if there's a gun being pointed at him from the other side. I mean, these guys look like absolute ridiculous. And so, it's going to have to be an organic. We're not going to stop because this one cannot last. We did a bad job at 9/11, but see the difference about 9/11 and Building 7, for example. I think of Charlie Kirk's assassination much like I look at Building 7. What they tell us versus what we saw with our eyes cannot be. Both cannot exist in the same breath. Okay, so we can't have the trajectory. If you look at the Charlie Kirk shooting, what we clearly see is there's an upward movement on this. Okay, what they're calling is that the left side of his neck is the entrance wound. That's what they say. It's actually the exit wound. And then you get so we don't have any blood at the crime scene. Anyways, what we're saying is it doesn't make sense. What you're telling me in my eyes, it's not matching. Building 7 falling down like that, it wasn't impacted. It just set on fire with some office furniture, and it just folds down like an old man getting into a nice warm bath. That building just fell down perfectly. You know what I mean? And so again, my eyes are saying, well, hold on a second. That looks controlled. That looks imploded. That looks not like an office fire. Perfect symmetry on the implosion. We didn't have, say, the outlets in 2001. There was no podcasting and YouTubes and Instagram shorts and Twitter and X and everybody with an iPhone that could capture really good footage. We didn't have any of that in 2001. We had ABC, we had CBS, we had NBC telling us this is the story, and we're going to go into those caves in Afghanistan and we're going to get them. But what they actually told us was the greatest conspiracy story ever, that a guy in a cave in Afghanistan took out 3 buildings in New York City with 2 planes and then went on to, demolish others. And so anyways, the story is a joke. They told us and forced us to believe that they were first to narrative. They were first to story. They were first to market. This story's different, has major national implications, the Charlie Kirk assassination, but we have our own footage. We have our own voices. We have our own platforms to question, challenge, and continuously get into the mind of maybe somebody who says, well, I don't know what happened. I'll listen. That kind of, we have a chance here. But if everybody gets apathetic, everybody just says, you know what? Again, next week's bills are coming. We've got soccer on Friday. We've got blah, 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 blah. Charlie Kirk, who? We get into that mode and they get away with it again. I'm sorry, your thoughts, put a button on it, and then we'll make sure we get everywhere people can get the book, connect with you. But just your thoughts on, are we to just take this laying down? Okay, he's good. We're moving on. Next thing, because the next one's worse. Next one's worse and more graphic.
Yeah, I think, unfortunately, that's going to be the story. I think I know there's people like Candace Owens who are, working on it, whatever that
And
means.
they're trashing her. They're destroying her. She's being told she's a fool. Right.
Right. And you're going to be held out as some kind of kook.
Yeah.
I mean, for years, you bring it back to the Kennedy thing. How many times did we hear, oh, it's the mob, it's somebody else, it's the CIA, it's Lyndon Johnson. There'll be a lot of theories thrown out. None of them will get enough, legs to move forward. And we'll end up settling for a lot of reasons on the theory that's produced by the government. That's how it always works, right?
Exactly.
So unless you break it open early, and if this Robinson fella, if he doesn't do something, he's either going to face death, since because he picked the wrong place to commit this crime,
right?
And or if he's got something that exonerates him, or at least brings other people into it. It's kind of like the Epstein issue. Ghislaine Maxwell, besides not taking off as she should have probably, I'm giving advice to criminals, but she had citizenship where she could have been gone in another country that they wouldn't.
Israel doesn't send back. Israel keeps them. Even if you're wanted for the most despicable child crime in America, if you're an Israeli citizen and you flee to Israel, they will not return you. That's our greatest ally. That's a shame. Go ahead.
Yes, and there's other countries that do the same.
Sure.
But the problem is, here's someone that didn't rat out everybody else, supposedly, that she knew about. Why not? And if Robinson goes down that same path, and if he is part of a conspiracy, I know there's a lot of ifs there, but if he is, and he doesn't start talking, where does it go? I mean, and it stays where it is. It'll be him, and he'll either make a deal where he gets life in prison, no parole, or he's going to get the death penalty. I know Charlie Kirk's wife has said, it's up to the state.
Yeah.
I'd be saying death penalty, but then again,
and that's where I'm trying to say, hold on, everybody, because if it wasn't him, because I'm going to tell you right now, the story that they've put together isn't going to work. You would not get a conviction on the bullets alone. You're going to have to put some meat on the bone where you say it pulverized his neck, but it prevented from going. Okay, prove it in court, right? You can't. Okay, so they're going to either kill him or force the deal. Maxwell, for example, right now is in a very comfortable work release type of program. And it was very clear to her when she gave that interview, clear all the big names. You'll be going home soon, honey, but we have to do this sort of a special way, which is transfer you, kind of get you distant. We're already doing our work on covering up the Epstein list. Keep your mouth shut. You'll be fine before you know it. I wouldn't be surprised if we, the American people, at some point aren't going to be forced to give an apology to Ghislaine Maxwell. It says, oh my gosh, we've really railroaded you. It really was just Jeffrey Epstein. She's been let go, and off she goes. And the reason I can say that is because Trump doesn't have a pure heart in going after the guts of this thing. I don't think he was guilty of the crimes on the island. I really don't. I don't think he needed that. I don't think that was his cup of tea. But I do think he understands the global implications, the order, the structure, when people, CEOs and senators and congressmen and these type of influencers, these kind of players are now being taken down. And you saw Thomas Massie right in front of Kash Patel give names, specific names, banker names, tiptoe right up to names in Hollywood, tiptoe right up to names in Congress. I could not imagine. So that's what I'm saying. You got to give it to the American people. You got to overwhelm them. You got to flood them. You got to put this so far into their guts, eyes, hearts, minds that this hero politician that you've been worshiping for so long was doing these things to children. How do you like it now? And let them have a different look of government. It's like we, the American people, have a complete transformation in how we view government officials. These are not rock stars. These are not noble. These are not worthy and honorable. For the most part, 90% of them, you probably wouldn't let watch your kids. Treat them like the employees of yours they are, which is, we expect this, and we're going to follow up on this. If you're not willing to do that work, please step aside. We'll get somebody else. But we are your employer, and we will call all the shots. We've reversed that, and it's like so close to permanent. We thought maybe Trump would lead us out of that, where politicians are below us, and we're coming up and we're leading the. it's not the case. I don't know. Final thoughts on next move for the country. How do we end the year? Hopes, prosperity. What are you looking out for as we get a little bit mover? I mean, I'm in despair. You maybe have more encouragement.
Yeah, I think, I think there's got to be more focus on the economy.
Yeah.
We have to figure out how can people make it that are working for a living. I mean, I shouldn't say where everybody works for a living, but that are just getting by paycheck to paycheck, because that's going to be the future. If those people aren't taken care of, they're going to lose all hope. Right. And hope, hope is something.
You take it out, it's not good.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's where they're going to have to concentrate, I think, and maybe a little less. I know the media likes to push Ukraine and bring up things like that.
Yeah.
I'm like you. Yeah, it'd be nice if it ended.
Yeah.
But it's not going to make much of a difference to me and to most people.
Affecting our lives zero.
Right.
Yeah. Other than it's causing inflation. So you could say end it for the purposes of inflation. You're printing money to do this stuff. So you're totally right. We're against all wars. Why? We don't benefit. It hurts our pocketbook. Any other questions? We're not America first. We're America only. I'm America only. Until further notice, it's America only. Dennis, where's all the ways people can get the book, connect with you, stay in touch with you?
Yes, I'm on Facebook. I'm at X at Dennis Brennan 61. And my website is authordennisbrennan.com. The book is for sale there, paperback, hard copy, some kind of ebook. It's also available on Amazon.com, all three formats, and Barnes & Noble, and pretty much everywhere books are sold.
Excellent. Well, this is great work. It's been a great show. So many things out there buzzing around. We'll do it again because there'll be, by the time we hook up again, or here comes 2026, but there will have been another epic major event. This is different than I thought. What I thought with Joe Biden is you didn't know what to expect. So many bad things. And what's ironic is not that there's the same spirit behind it, but holy cow, America has a lot of things moving and dialing in on its demise. It feels like we have crosshairs on us as American citizen with so many things moving around us. And so it's hope, like you encourage. So I'm going to be following you for that. And I'm going to just pray for President Trump that he says, okay, I did a lot of nice things for other people. I owe it to get right back to work for the American people. So we're going to pray that that is the spirit in the White House and quit all this funny business. And folks, do this until next time. Serve God, help others, stay good. Goodbye. God bless everybody.
The Matthew Dark Show, your one-stop show for truth, courage, fellowship, and faith. Available everywhere you get your podcasts.